Welcome to our deep dive today. Um, I know a lot of you have been asking to explore the Buddhist concept of Nibbana
Hmm.
and how it all connects with happiness, or maybe the absence of it.
Yeah.
We're going to be using happiness, unhappiness, and Nibbana to really unpack all this.
Great text.
It
It
is.
really is.
So this text really starts by diving into this idea of what they call sensual happiness.
Right.
You know, those like simple pleasures that we all kind of naturally gravitate toward,
Yeah.
like delicious food or a beautiful sunset or a nice compliment.
Mm-hmm.
But then it immediately puts a caveat on this. It
Oh.
basically says that this kind of happiness is like, by definition, fleeting.
Well, and there's a good reason for that.
Okay.
There's actually a biological basis for why we experience pleasure
Interesting.
as this sort of temporary sensation. Like it's there to motivate us
I see.
rather than be a constant state. Imagine if like one bite of cake gave you like 3 days of bliss.
Right.
I mean, productivity would just plummet.
I mean, who would get anything done?
No one would get anything done.
So the text uses this example of England's weather,
Okay.
which is so famously fickle,
Right.
to make this point.
Yeah.
Like a sunny day is like such a cause for celebration because it's so rare,
Uh-huh.
so you can't build this lasting happiness on something that's so fleeting.
It's like trying to build a house on shifting sand. The foundation is just inherently unstable.
And this is where the Buddhist concept of dukkha comes into play,
Yeah,
which I think is a really interesting concept
absolutely. It's key.
because the text is very specific that dukkha is more than just suffering.
Yeah.
It's also this feeling of imperfection and ultimately like a lack of complete satisfaction.
Yeah, it's very nuanced. It's not that pleasure is bad or anything like that. It's just
Right.
that it's incomplete.
Right.
Like I think the house on sand is a good analogy for that.
Yeah. And so the text says we suffer when we expect something that's impermanent to be permanent, and then I think we all do that.
Oh, for sure.
And then it tells this really interesting anecdote
Oh yeah, what's that?
about, the 1970s and this like pervasive optimism
Yeah.
at the time that science was going to eradicate suffering.
Oh, right.
Like we were going to cure all diseases and replace all failing organs.
Right.
And we would even cheat aging.
That was the thought.
But the author uses this to show how this desire for enduring happiness
Right.
can lead to these unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, for sure.
And this brings us to attachment. It's like a really central theme in this text.
Mm-hmm.
It says that being attached to anything that's impermanent, like, just causes suffering.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about it. Because all these things, they change, right? They come and they go.
Right. It's not just sensory pleasure. It's
Yeah.
also like relationships and material possessions and even life itself.
So if your happiness depends on those things never changing, then you're going to be disappointed.
And so to illustrate this, the text gives this example of this woman
Oh, yeah.
who keeps getting married
Okay.
over and over again, but not really for companionship. It's really just for the feeling of romance.
Okay.
And so she like revels in the honeymoon phase. But then as soon as that feeling fades, she moves on.
So it's more about the idea than the reality.
Exactly. And I think we can all relate to that
Oh, for sure.
in some area of life.
Absolutely.
So I think this is a really important point that the text is making. Buddhism isn't about denying yourself pleasure.
No, not at all.
It's not about living this like Spartan existence.
Right.
It's about understanding what things actually are, and seeing them as tools,
Right.
not like the source of ultimate fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really helpful distinction, I think.
It is.
So if we can't find lasting happiness in, all these external things,
Right.
where can we find it?
Yeah, that's the big question.
And that's where Nibbana comes in. So Nibbana is often misunderstood.
Definitely.
And the text is very clear that it's not about like oblivion or annihilation.
Right. Yeah.
It's not about rejecting the world or
Yeah.
like going into some blissful trance.
Wow.
It's more about cultivating an internal space where attachments don't have this hold on you. So it's like the text describes it as a state where mental clinging loses its grip. It's admittedly a hard concept to grasp.
Oh, yeah.
So I think analogies can be really helpful here.
They can be.
So like think about the space in a room
Okay.
versus the objects that are in it.
Mm-hmm.
So the space itself is unaffected,
Right.
whether the room is full or empty.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Or think about the sky
Okay.
and all the different weather patterns that are happening in it.
Uh-huh.
So the sky is vastness remains even as clouds gather and storms rage, and eventually they all dissipate.
Yeah.
So those are just a couple of ways to think about it. And the text encourages us to try to, even for just a moment, Imagine what that kind of detachment might feel like.
Yeah, to kind of observe the world, including our own thoughts and feelings,
Yeah.
without getting so caught up in them.
And so this is where meditation comes in. The text really emphasizes meditation as the primary tool.
The path.
So it talks about specific practices,
Okay, like what?
like noticing really challenging emotions,
Uh-huh.
like sorrow or boredom or frustration,
Fully.
like observing how we tend to cling
Oh, yeah.
to our physical body or our thoughts. So it's really about becoming aware of the clinging itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's so interesting.
It is.
Why is just observing something so powerful?
Well, because it creates this separation between you and your automatic reaction.
I see.
So you start to see your thoughts instead of getting swept away by them.
Yeah, and I think that's so interesting, how this ancient practice is so resonant with, what we see now.
Totally.
This interest in mindfulness.
Yeah.
It's like everywhere.
It's everywhere.
And so this text then asks this really thought-provoking question.
Uh-huh.
If you're not all of these temporary elements, your physical form, your thoughts, your emotions,
Yeah.
then who are you? The text says this is actually the wrong question to ask.
What?
Yeah, it suggests that our suffering actually comes from trying to define ourselves, like trying to grasp onto this fixed identity,
Huh.
when actually, everything is interconnected and in a constant state of change. So instead of giving an answer, the text leaves us with this kind of Zen-like paradox.
I like it.
Yeah, it suggests that true understanding comes from letting go of the need
Right.
for concrete answers,
Okay.
from embracing this state of not knowing. And I think that's a really powerful idea.
Is.
So it's like an invitation to explore our own experiences
Mm-hmm.
without clinging to these rigid notions
Okay.
of who we are,
Of the self.
of the self.
Yeah.
Like you can't look directly at your own eyes. You can see everything around them, but not the eyes themselves. We can analyze our thoughts and feelings and sensations. That eye that's doing the analyzing is hard to pin down.
So the text is saying that maybe that's not a problem?
Right.
Like maybe this constant search for who am I is actually part of the problem.
Yeah, it keeps our focus on the self, on this idea of being a separate individual when really everything is connected and changing all the time. It's about becoming aware of the grime that's obscuring our vision,
Right.
all those judgments and comparisons and clinging that distort reality, and then gently letting them go.
The text talks about how we tend to push away unpleasant experiences.
Yeah, like boredom or anger or sadness.
We distract ourselves or numb ourselves to avoid those feelings altogether.
But meditation actually encourages the opposite approach,
Like what?
to actually face those uncomfortable emotions,
Really?
to look at them with this sense of curiosity and compassion, to let them arise and be fully present, and then let them go.
The goal isn't to wallow in those emotions.
Right.
It's to recognize that they're part of the human experience.
Yeah, just like happiness.
They're temporary. They don't define us.
The text talks about the importance of disassociating from these emotions,
Okay.
not getting caught up in the story of them,
Yeah.
not letting them define who we are.
There's a real sense of freedom in that.
Yeah.
The freedom to feel the whole range of human emotions without getting entangled, without letting them control us.
It's about finding that inner sanctuary within ourselves,
Right.
that space of pure awareness that's always there no matter what's happening around us.
The text says that this lifetime itself is a continuous meditation.
It's not just about sitting on a cushion for an hour.
Right. It's about bringing that awareness to every moment.
To our relationships, to our work, to everything.
Yeah.
The text challenges us to think about the sources of misery in our lives and to see how often we actually create our own suffering.
Through our attachments and expectations and resistance to change.
We have a choice in how we respond to the world.
We can react with anger and frustration, or we can choose to respond with wisdom and compassion.
The text says that Nibbana isn't a destination.
Okay.
It's more like a direction, a path.
A way of orienting our minds towards peace and freedom.
It's about recognizing that lasting happiness isn't something we find out there in the world.
It's something we cultivate within.
The text encourages us to let go of this idea of attaining enlightenment and instead to just embody it.
To let our true nature shine through.
To let our wisdom and compassion radiate outward.
It's about living with awareness and intention.
Recognizing that everything is impermanent.
And finding peace amidst the constant change.
It's a beautiful and demanding path,
It takes courage and commitment.
but the rewards are immense.
Absolutely.
The text ends with this really thought-provoking concept.
Okay.
It says that the path to Nibbana isn't about getting rid of the sensory world.
Interesting.
It's about understanding it so deeply that we're no longer fooled by its illusions.
Like we stop expecting it to be the source of our happiness.
Right, but we can still appreciate its beauty and wonder.
Without getting attached.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance
Hmm.
between engaging with the world and detaching from its fleeting pleasures,
It's about being fully present in this moment.
while recognizing that this moment too will pass,
It's about embracing impermanence.
and finding peace at the very heart of existence. It's like the sensory world becomes our teacher. It shows us impermanence and the truth of dukkha and the power of letting go.
It's about seeing the world as it really is, not through our desires or fears, but with a clarity that allows us to just see things as they are.
And that's where real peace and happiness come from. The text reminds us that Nibbana isn't some experience we have after we die.
Right.
It's not some far-off goal.
It's available right here, right now.
In this moment,
Yeah.
it's about cultivating a mind that's open and receptive and free from clinging.
And that kind of mind can find peace and contentment no matter what's happening externally.
So how does all of this apply to our own journeys toward happiness?
Well, the text might not give us all the answers,
Right.
but it does give us a new way of looking at the questions.
Yeah, it encourages us to explore our own experiences.
With curiosity and compassion and a willingness to let go of what we think we know.
The text ends with this really powerful statement.
What's that?
It says, this lifetime is a lifetime of meditation. So imagine what would happen if we really lived that way.
Yeah.
If we approach every moment with that kind of awareness and intention.
What would change in our life?
What new possibilities would open up?
Those are the questions I'll leave you with as we wrap up our deep dive into happiness, unhappiness, and Nibbana.
Thanks for joining us.